Thank you for joining us for another episode of Film Club. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Harrison, and with me, as always, it is Andy Donaldson.
Hello.
Every week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us, and this week, we're taking a look at 1984's Dune.
There are warring factions. There's a planet full of spice, a desert planet. They fight and argue and use voice as weapons. And there's worms.
There's definitely worms. So this is, like I said, 1984. It's coming from David Lynch.
Well, hold on. Alan Smithy, because he didn't like it that much that he didn't want to even put his name on it.
Yeah, so I was just getting to that.
Sorry.
And this is relatively early in his career. So Eraserhead's like 1977.
Mm-hmm.
Dune's 1984. So there's only about a 7-year gap there. In the middle of it, he made Elephant Man,
which we know was class.
And this is sort of notorious for what you were just saying, is that he took an Alan Smithy. And Alan Smithy, for anyone who doesn't know, is a name that a director will replace on their credit if they want some sort of disassociation with the film. You know, they actually don't consider it representative of their work. As far as I'm aware, not every cut of this has an Alan Smithy credit on it, but whether that's because of mistake in recreditation or whether it's, David Lynch actually sort of embracing certain cuts, he's notoriously sort of gone on record and said he really dislikes Dune. And for me, as someone who absolutely loves David Lynch, I kind of have to agree. Like, I saw this film many, many years ago when I was sort of first getting into David Lynch and watched it chronologically, coming off of Eraserhead, coming off of Elephant Man. And those two films sort of represent interesting styles for David Lynch. Eraserhead being the thing that really he's known for and really the thing that he goes on for. And Elephant Man being a much more solid, firm narrative piece, a very sort of standard narrative. And Dune, clearly, I think anyway, is that it's David Lynch getting into bed with Hollywood and trying to make a film in a way that everybody else sort of makes a film. And that just does not work for him. That's not the way he works as a filmmaker. That's not the way he works as an artist. And this film really, really suffers for it.
To his credit, and for those that don't know, this is actually based off a 1965 book by Frank Herbert. But the novels that it's based off, Dune, is there's many of them. It's a long story that spans generations. I've never read Dune myself, but I know a lot of our friends have like kind of raved on about how good it is as a book, and also how much they hate the movie. So to David Lynch's credit, he tried to compile. I mean, what's the running time of this? 2 hours, just over 2 hours. Compile all that information. I don't know if it was the full extent of the novels. I don't think it goes into his kids, Paul's kids, but like all that information of all those books into just over 2 hour film. It's a big task.
I've heard a lot of people like sort of liken the Dune book series to something akin to like, Lord of the Rings in terms of its mythology and its depth.
And like in the end, Lord of the Rings had its own film back in, I think it was 80s or something, and that's barely spoken about. The Peter Jackson did his trilogy, which thankfully was a trilogy, and we're looking at the upcoming film that's supposed to be like more than one film, let's say. And yeah, I agree with you. It was fucking sloppy, messy. There's too many things happening at once. There are too many characters. There's too many characters that are kind of like quite a big antagonist or quite a big protagonist that have. There for Gurney, for example. Gurney, who's Patrick Stewart. So Gurney, he's there, big part of the film at the start, and then he disappears. And then you've got the Emperor, who's like spoken about all the way throughout the film. You see him at the start. You don't even have a presence for the Emperor. Who is he? He's heavily overshadowed by the Baron. The Baron is good, weirdly grotesque, like his whole faction. I think they're called it begins with H, isn't it? Harkonnen. But in amongst that faction, you have his two nephews, you have him, you have a doctor, you have a concubine, I think they call them, the mind people, and you just introduce this plethora of fucking characters, and you don't know who's who. You're just not really into the film. You're just like, all right, this is happening. It's a mess. It's unfortunate because There is some lovely moments of this. There's some really good storytelling, visually and audibly. It's class. Certain parts of that fucking shield looks absolutely
But
horrendous.
just how absolutely Lynchian is that? That shield, that digital effect is so typical of David Lynch. It looks like the same sort of bloody effects he does in like the season 3, The Return of Twin Peaks, not only a couple of years ago. He loves that sort of weird low budget stuff. But I think you're totally right. There are moments in this that are excellent. I do actually love the first time you see the worm. You know, when they're in
the sense of scale.
it's incredible. It's really well done. It totally plays with like Lynch's embracing of like practical effects. I mean, you know, we're sort of in the era of cinema that's pre heavy digital effects anyway, and it works fantastically. There's moments in this that work on a cinematic level, but everything you've just gone over contributes to the overarching tone this film has that is boredom.
Oh, it's so boring.
It's a series that should be kind of wonderfully exciting. Like, I know it's been likened to the idea of like Star Wars, but for adults. And that should really work. You know, enriching the idea of Star Wars is sort of archetypical, and it should be really interesting. The fact that there's this warring trade over spices, and then there's this indigenous like sort of people versus like the culmination of hierarchy and industry that's oppressing this world, and even the sort of the monstrosity that is the sandworm and stuff, and all of it. If I'm honest, by the end of this film, I didn't care about a single thing in it.
No.
Even worse still, I love Kyle MacLachlan. I think he's a fantastic actor. And in this, I couldn't care less about him. I absolutely could not care less about him. Well, yeah, this is, you know, debut. It's the first time he ever works with David Lynch as well. And obviously they'd gone to be long-time collaborators in excellent stuff. And in this, I couldn't care less about him. The thing is, I don't know if you know this, Andy.
No.
People love this film. There are a subsection of people who really genuinely love this film. There's something about it that connects with them. I can't help but wonder if it's the material that's brought over from the books that interests people.
Yeah.
Is it the world? Is it the lore? Because the thing that I find so frustrating about Dune is that there's something there. There is something there, but this is not a good representation of what that thing is.
There were parts of it I did enjoy, and I must admit, I can see that kind of, lose yourself in the immersion of fantasy. There are elements of that there, especially when he's out in the desert. But from a pacing perspective and from like what's going on, who's who, and just too much happening, it doesn't do it for me. But visually, as you said there, he's good at his practical effects. Some of the visuals in terms of how he's put layers upon layers and everything like that, that looks really cool. I really, really, really enjoyed the sound design of this. I thought it was really fucking good. Even as daft as this kind of, the voice gun things sound, the audio was really cool for it. They've done well to like kind of polish that into and master it into the actual material of the film and everything going on in that final battle. You got the like that, and it just really works. But for me, what really kills it, and a big fan of him, is Brian Eno and his sensational score. I don't know if he scored it, sorry, but it's sensational music that kind of goes over his ethereal kind of sound that kind of really helps build that kind of world-building fantasy feel. I mean, what better man than Brian Eno, really? But it's also done by Toto, who we know, obviously, for Africa, one of your favourite songs ever. There's a few like kind of like more rocky kind of moments and everything, but for me, it's Brian Eno that just you have this wonderful desert landscape, and you have Eno going over, and it's just like, oh, come on. They were the moments I really enjoyed. So there is, unlike Boondock Saints, there is something to kind of take from this and enjoy over this.
One little fact for you before we go. This might raise your spirits on the existence of Dune. David Lynch was offered this and Return the Jedi and turned down Return the Jedi to do Dune.
I did not know that.
Just imagine how he could have messed up the third Star Wars film.
Well, what would you cast Sting as? Bloody Darth Vader or Sidious or something?
As an Ewok.
Oh, Christ.
There is Dune. You can let us know in the comments below what you thought of Dune. If you are one of those people who is, of the cult following of Dune and you really love this film, let us know what you thought of the film, because I do want to know why people love this. I do want to know if it goes beyond the book or if it is just, the mythology, the world building that people are drawn to. But Andy and I will be back once again next week, where we're going to take a look at Alfred Hitchcock's Rope.
Yeah, not just some like kind of bog standard rope. We're actually going to look at a film.
So until then, get watching.